The reason I reached out, Rob, obviously, like I said, I don't really get into politics too deeply on this for a variety of reasons, but I'm fascinated by it. Like, I went from a couple of years ago of getting rid of all my social media politics because it was so negative to becoming like, it was almost like watching TV for entertainment, watching this U.S. election thing. Like,
Yeah.
it's wild, and now I'm watching the Canadian thing, so I just want your 2 cents, I guess.
Well, I mean, the U.S. political. I mean, it was theater. It's like watching. It is.
That's a great word.
It's
Theater.
It's theater. It's political theater, but it's entertainment. I mean, we don't have to get into the whole concept of whether we like or dislike Trump, because I think a lot of people have the same opinion on him. But he understood it better than the Democrats. And for a guy that's been denigrated since he first got elected, since he first ran, I mean, it was a big FU.
Oh, for
It
sure.
was a big FU to the legacy media and the Democratic establishment.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Most of the conversations I've had with people who don't like Trump, I say, well, how about people weren't voting for Trump? How about 60 or 70 million didn't vote for Trump? How about they voted against what the other side has been offering? How about that is maybe the truth,
I don't think a lot of them still realize that. And as we were just talking before you turned the mic on, I mean, I think legacy media probably did more to get Trump elected than they realize. And, the same old tripes and the same old, and eventually people are just looking and say, we're tired of the woke stuff. We're tired of the crap with kids in our schools. We're tired with living paycheck to paycheck and seeing, money hemorrhage out of everything through no fault of our own. And they vote with their wallets. I mean, they vote with their wallets and in the protection of their kids. That's how people of the U.S. voted, in my mind.
Like, I'm sure there's people smarter than us know the answer to this, but it'd be interesting to know that idea of the integrity of the journalist guy, the guy in the 6 o'clock news who you trusted to tell you the truth and just the facts, and there was no bias. I wonder when that kind of changed.
Oh, I think it's been changed. I think that was a very, I wouldn't say naive, but very quaint notion when like a Walter Cronkite U.S. came on, and
that's what I'm thinking.
Exactly, Walter Cronkite's a good, or even maybe Tom Brokaw back in the day. I mean, I'm old enough to remember some of these guys, sadly, but I think it's changed, and now it's there. They tell you what they want you to hear, as opposed to what maybe actually is the truth or what they're seeing. I mean, getting back to this whole Trump thing, and someone asked me, I said, he was going to win. I mean, I'm not any sort of big prognosticator for saying that, because I think a lot of people shared my opinion, but I said, and if I was in the States, I would have voted for him. And I say that to some people that are some of the more liberal friends in my circle, and I would tell them why. And not because I like the guy, not because I think he's a nice person or he's got a great personality, or none of that, but for the same reason I just said. You vote with your wallet. I vote with my wallet.
I think a lot of people do. We're hurting up here in Canada. We talk about it a lot. About, it's funny because I think the Trudeau house is on fire right now. And again, I don't want to dive into it too deeply, and I feel myself doing it. But the challenge is, it's a combination of that and their kind of 10-year average, lifespan of a political party is up. So it's almost like a perfect storm for them to get changed out.
Yeah, and I mean, let's face it, every file this government has touched, at least from our Albertan point of view, has been a disaster. I mean, and it's not just bad, and it's not just a little bit corrupt or a little bit sideways where you go, you don't like it, you'd never support it, but it's not going to kill you. I'm afraid where we're going in this country, dead last in OECD growth, like we're forecast to be dead last. You think this country, with the resources we have, in a world that needs oil and gas, in a world that's doing all this mining to continue with the green revolution, we should be a juggernaut. I don't know if I can swear here, but I tell you, there's a few choice words. We should be a juggernaut right now. Well, and we've been bludgeoned by this government. It's 9.5 years, and they have crippled us.
Well, it's funny. I had, we're sitting where you were a couple of days ago, was a friend named Dan King. He has a website called energynow.ca,
yeah.
and really great, thoughtful guy, big supporter of the energy industry, and he just said, he's just beside himself. Like, we could be like a powerhouse, and he asked about, support pipelines. I said, what, I call it support pipelines, but the reality is I always thank people for supporting Canadian energy. Because to me, it's not about just pipelines. It's about mining, it's about potash, it's about the forestries. Like, it's about the minerals. It's about all of
Yep.
it. That's who I support, Canadian Energy, and we just feel like we're just kneecapped every opportunity. And I don't know all the ins and outs, Rob, but I don't claim to. But it really personally really bothered me when I see like projects like the KXL being played as political football. So based on the political winds of the day,
Yeah.
whether these projects get approved, I don't like that.
No, and you know what? Any Canadian that has any kind of sense, I mean, I'll just backtrack for a second. I believe the first and foremost responsibility of any government, be it the municipal government, provincial government, is to manage the fiscal affairs and to try to create an environment to create as much economic prosperity for as many people. And then with that saying, then, with extra money and increased revenues and, the pet projects and trying to help, the less fortunate or whatever, comes with it. I get that. But, what we're seeing now is, like you said, it's a perversion of what, actual people want. It's a perversion of what, I wouldn't say perversion, it's just destroyed. It has destroyed our economy. Like, I don't think people realize how deep a hole we're in right now. And with the tariff war ostensibly on the horizon after January 20th with the Orange Man in power, I don't think it bodes well because we've got a bunch of, high schoolers, going to toe with Mike Tyson in the ring here. We're going to get bludgeoned.
I know. I mean, it is interesting because some of the interesting conversations I've had in my own life are people who don't necessarily see it the same way I do. And what we decided was, people innately have their own values they grew up with, and as well as their life experiences, of course. But the reality is we do see politics different ways in different people, and it's tough to marry some of those things with your friends.
Yeah, no, it is, and you don't want to sit necessarily in your own echo chamber. It's funny because, we're talking a bit about social media, and I think, legacy media is dying. It's been corroded and corrupted, and people now are their own content creators. You doing this and being a big booster of Canadian Energy, I mean, is a form of media, getting a message out that you wouldn't necessarily see in the Herald or on CBC radio or anything like that. It just dismays me, and I can see it in your eyes and you can hear it in your voice that you feel the same way. It just dismays me what's happened, and trying to get that message across to people that think that bigger government is good and that they should be there for everything and pay for everything. Well, money has to come from somewhere, and you're kneecapping the only industry really that could pull us out of the glue that we're in, and we're in a very deep, thick glue. Is the energy sector, and I find it dismaying talking to people that don't understand that, and friends included. And so that sometimes what happens is that we end up not talking at all because you don't want to get into a row. I mean, think about how toxic it was if you God forbid, if you said that you were going to vote for Trump up here.
Yeah.
Like, are you crazy? How could you do that? He's terrible. He's awful. He's this. He's that. He might be, but I mean, I think when you get to that level, you're probably got some warts and some baggage, and you're not probably as pristine as your supporters would like to think.
I know, but I don't like the idea that politics interferes with friendships. I mean, I saw it with COVID. Like, it literally ruined friendships and family, Rob. And I don't want to go down that road, but it is such a polarizing issue these days. And it seems by every generation it's getting worse.
Yeah, I do too. I agree. I think, again, the devil is some of the social media. It's us and them. And the algos will play to what you want to, what you support. I support energy. And the algos will give me all things that, bro. That's why I watch and read stuff that I'm probably not going to agree with. I'm probably not going to like, but just to give me some sort of balanced perspective. The other thing too, and this is a deeper, longer, conversation for maybe another podcast, but we have to get the education system back on track where people get balance on any issue, that our kids are taught both sides, the pros and cons of the energy industry, pros and cons of going green, all of that, in order to have a thoughtful adult when they come out as adults, when they come out of adult, school and become adults. They're not offended by you saying something that they didn't agree with because they were spoon-fed something one-sided.
Oh, Robert, I would argue very strongly that's going to be a tough agenda to achieve. I mean, the reality is people have their own biases. I remember my kids when they were in elementary school, they came home and they're talking about they were developing COP and it was going to wreck the animals, and they were telling me all this stuff, and this was coming from a teacher. Well, I almost lost my mind. I'm like, whoa, how does this align with the curriculum you're supposed to be teaching the kids? Like, people do have their own biases, and I don't know how do you manage human nature?
Well, I mean, I think at the university level, I think governments have probably a bigger club there. You sit there and start saying, we're going to defund you. Like, we're going to pull funding for universities unless you are going to sit there and properly allow both sides to be debated, and, you know, with the stuff that's going on in the Middle East, like groups to be protected and to thoughtfully articulate why they're, and then the other side can speak and protect it there. And then that's how you start.
See, but you hit it right on the head. To me, constructive dialogue, and I use that word very strongly, constructive dialogue, it's dead, Rob.
Yeah.
You don't see it. Where everyone's forced into one camp, whether they like it or not, because of one or two key defining issues, and they don't even have the opportunity to have some of these dialogues because people are so closed off. They're hesitant to give up an inch, heaven forbid, because then they think they'll lose a mile.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, and as some of my American friends said that, you know, that, and I've got Americans. We buy from some American suppliers, so, you know, I mean, you know, I've got a lot of affinity for Americans, especially
Likewise.
when you meet them on their own turf, right? I mean, some of the most hospitable people on earth.
100%.
And what they said in the last sort of number of, you know, last 2-3 election cycles with Trump and not Trump and then Trump again, is that politically, this is my opinion, but the left, some of it got so insane, so you know, the lunacy is that moderate, middle of the road Americans that might be, you know, a little bit more liberal on social issues but conservative on fiscal issues would waffle, I don't know, and be able to sit there. The way it's gone, they just got pushed.
They got pushed into the side.
They got pushed, you know what? It's now it's us or them, because you are so crazy and so lunatic out there that I'm going to go the other side. And it's not a bed of roses, but it's better than that. And I think that's what's happening. And it's happening in our country too.
Oh, I know. It's such a shame. I was told maybe about a year ago, and it was reminded me a couple months ago, John Fitz told me, he goes, oh, you're a libertarian. Because I did say, you know what, socially, I'm super liberal, because I don't give a shit who you are, what you are, who you love. I think it's awesome. Oh, but do your thing, man. Whatever, you do you, basically. But fiscally, like, I'm pretty serious, conservative when it comes to that. So I go, and I don't want the government involved. I just want to be left alone, do my own thing. I want to say what I want to say. I just want to be left alone. Wow. And I guess apparently that makes me libertarian.
Well, it's funny you mentioned our buddy Johnny Fitz, who, you should get him to tell you the story of the night that Trump got elected the first time. Maybe, you got to ask him that. Oh, it's a classic story. He was actually a little embarrassed, but I mean, we're buddies, so it didn't matter. Yeah. But he's come full circle.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he's come like, and I'm not saying you have to agree with everything that I espouse or believe in, but it's amazing when thoughtful people can sit back and start to reflect on things and then sort of like pull back and see it goes, oh.
It's funny, Johnny's coming a little more conservative than even I was.
I think a lot more conservative than, because he's seen it firsthand. He's seen it in his business. He saw it in his trying to develop his place in Kimberley with his brother and all the bureaucratic from left-wing government. And it's like, it's crap. And it's costing people a lot of extra money too. Even social things that you don't think, you know, people don't see the threads, how they eventually get tied. To have, you know, bureaucrats telling you what you can say or not, or trying to make laws, it just, there's a cost. There's a financial cost that people get hired to look after, and to sit there and police people's thoughts. To me, it's like it's Orwellian. It's 1984.
So, are you suggesting when Pierre gets in shortly that he should?
I hope it's really shortly, Dave. Sorry to interrupt you there.
It's shortly. He's going to be in.
Yeah.
You're suggesting that maybe he follow Trump's lead and get what I call him. The Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, or whatever they call themselves, and basically go through all these different departments.
Well, I don't know if you need to create another department and have another set of staff and another layer of bureaucrats to go through efficiency. I think you've probably poached from some of the existing bloated civil service, the ones that maybe do give a shit. Like my sister was a civil servant, and she's just she's just sickened to watch what government's become, and she retired a little bit early because she was fortunate if she could, and she just rolls her eyes. She goes, "It was bad, 15 years ago. It's disgusting now." So, but there are some good minds, and there's some bright people in government for sure. And it's kind of the bell curve, right? You're going to have good and bad and outliers on both sides. And you sit there and say, "We need to fix this. We need to sit there and cut thoughtfully." But we need to cut because, when you listen to Gondik, and there's another bugaboo at the municipal level, and people should pay more attention to municipal politics because it impacts us on our day-to-day far more than the other two levels. When she said that there's barely anything to cut in the municipal budget, where the vomit meter was at, like, running it red hot at 10. It's like, are you kidding me? Yet you've hired all these extra civil servants. I mean, if someone said you're going to hire more nurses, more teachers, more civil service, more postal carriers, whatever it is that's funded by government, and your life was going to improve and your service would be better, you might sit there and say, that's an okay bargain, I'll trade it off and we'll pay for the better service, but it's anything but. You could cut the civil service in every level of government in this country by half, and you and I probably wouldn't notice one iota difference in the level of service that we get for our tax dollars.
Yeah, I don't know. That's been a long conversation the past couple of weeks with the Canada Post system, and I've seen lots on LinkedIn, a lot of different, what do you call them, polls or whatever. And I don't want to say there's not a lot of sympathy, but there's a lot of frustration because once they start to come out with, it's not. I don't know what they're fighting for. I can't really. I don't know the ins and outs of it. But people are getting frustrated for some department again that takes so much money out of Parliament every year. How is it possible?
And loses $400+ million.
Yeah, how's it possible?
So, well, I mean, funny little story. So there's a post office in the base of our building. So when they were at the early days of the strike, when they were forced to do their little picket line duty, and I know these people because you go down there and you send a courier, you buy some stamps, you do something. So, they're human beings and you don't want to be a total, prick. But then you see them outside, they're carrying placards and like, oh, support our postal heroes. And it's like, really? Really? You guys got cushy jobs, well paid for what you have to do, and for a service that's losing money and that we don't need every day. Nobody needs to get mail every day because most of it half the time is junk, right? Like once a week, maybe twice a week. The people I feel for it, and Canada, again, it's kind of like the legacy media helping Trump get elected because they're so stupid and so obtuse to what they're doing. It's the same thing with the postal workers. All they're doing is sowing the seeds of their demise because eventually people are going to say, you know what? I can get grandma that letter some way different. It's a generation that's older than me that is missing, being able to send, Johnny a Christmas card and their grandson with a $100 bill in it. But people will get around that, and it's happening already. I mean, the courier services, you pay more for it, but eventually, if you have enough competition in that, they're going to render Canada Post obsolete.
Well, why don't we just simplify it and say, you know what, the government isn't very good at running business, and maybe they should privatize it. Give it to the free market. I've told many people. I said, I got a couple of religions: free market and free speech. So
I couldn't agree with you more, Dave. Yeah. I could not agree with you more.
Yeah, but like you said, thank you for saying they are people and they do have their own challenges, issues, and I'm sympathetic to that as well.
Yeah, I'm not here to sit there and necessarily denigrate somebody because you are in a union at Canada Post or a nurses union or anything, but at the same token, again, they should take time to be a little bit more reflective of who's buttering their bread and maybe understand why people are pissed off, why people are frustrated. Like you see some elderly people and they're beside themselves right now because they're not getting mail or they can't send, their Christmas cards that they've sent out for years and years. And when you're 55 like I am, it's not that big a deal. You sit there and you pick up the phone or you send an email or a little, telegram on online and you get the message across. But when you're Grandma Smith and you're 88 years old and you want to send your grandkids a card with a gift in it, it's stressful. Cool. And it's dismaying for people that shouldn't have to go through that level of dismay because some people on the other side don't understand how good they have it for what they do and the value they bring to society. I'm sorry, being a postie, Shit, let me retire. I'll be a postie. I'll walk. I'll get the best shoes money can buy, and I'll deliver 3 routes instead of 1.
All right, well, delete out the last part. But, you know, a friend of ours, who I'll tell you after we get off the air here, they were one of the people, so they got a family trip booked with all the kids, and one of the kids has a passport that they can't access. So I think the post guys are back on, I want to say it's today, I thought. Today,
Yeah,
whatever it was.
I think they got back today.
Yeah. So I hope that passport can find them the next few days, basically.
Well, it's funny you say that, because when we went and did our Italy trip a couple of years ago, same thing. We're still coming out, dealing with the after effects of COVID and the passport offices. And God love my son, you know, the kids are way smarter than I ever was at that age and tech savvy. I said, Clark, I went naively down to the Area Hayes building downtown, thinking, okay, I'll get Clark, I'll get there, coffee, got my phone, I'll be there at 7, and stand in line for an hour, wait till it opens, and I get there and there's people camping out at the Area Hayes.
You gotta be kidding.
And no, I was not kidding. I like literally, and there was a line. Unless you need your passport today or something to that effect, excuse me, basically, you're short of luck. Don't bother. So Clark went online and Lethbridge Passport Office. So, and we were going to send it in, and then I'm glad we didn't. And again, this is where some people in government get it, and nice and thoughtful, and they remember who they serve. We went down there, drove down. We were the first appointment, Lethbridge. The office was empty, right? Still have the COVID rules with the mask and all that stuff. Get in there, get there. This lady, she looked and she pulled her mask down. She said, it's all BS. And it's like, all right, I think I'm going to like you. You can cut that if you want, Dave, or not, but I don't care. That's how I feel. So anyways, we sit there. There was a few errors we made, whatever. She like this, boom. So we did it, boom. Clark had his passport in, I don't know, it was a week and a half,
Awesome.
right? And ample time. We didn't have to stress. The only thing was the time of going down there. But you know what? I looked at it. It was 4 hours of windshield time with my son, which is something now that I don't do very often anymore. I cherish, and I remember him playing the music I liked. He said, "Dad, I'm listening to your music," and
Awesome.
and it was we made a trip out of it, right?
Yeah.
And there was a civil servant that got it, that understood people's frustrations, and understood why people were stressed, and she did everything to make it easy. And you know, it's like, geez, funny. I wish more people did that anywhere, government or not government. What a better world this place would be.
Oh my God. I was just talking to someone not 2 weeks ago about how much I love small towns. And my story was, so I come into town, say once a month for 2-3 days the most, over a long weekend, see Sweet Marie, see the kids, and then I'm gone again, back to work.
Yeah.
Well, if I need to get a blood appointment or whatever, there was a time you could book an appointment ahead of time, and it's great, but even that system is so clogged now. And it's well used, so that's good. People are using it.
Yeah.
So what I found was I can just literally almost the day of book an appointment out in Banff. So I drive out to Banff that day. I'm in and out in 15 minutes.
Perfect.
And back to Calgary.
Got a coffee.
Awesome.
You got if you got good roads, you got a beautiful drive. It's
Small towns. I love it.
Never a bad drive going
Yeah.
to Banff when you come look at the Rockies, especially when you're coming down that first hill. It's like,
No, but the Calgary's getting big, and this is one of the pains of living in a larger city.
yeah, for sure. There are growing pains living in a big city. I mean, you know, it's funny. I was in England a couple of weeks ago with Seren, and she had her trip, and my lovely wife was doing her thing, and so I went over there and played tours for 5 days, and it was great. Like, I mean, so much history, and there's so many things, but you see that city and the size of it, and it's like, you know, I obviously realize the older I get, I want quiet, and I want a little tranquility, and I don't need the crowds, and it's just like, sometimes you wonder how places like that even function. Right? I mean, they do, and they obviously have, but I mean, a lot of growing pains living in a city that big. I mean, I think it's bad here, and then you go to London, you realize that Calgary's small town in comparison.
But I think about this every time I go to see my mom in Parksville on the island, and I'm like, I could see the attraction. There's no traffic, everything just moves slower. You can get across town in, I'm going to say 5-7 minutes.
I know.
It's small. It's getting pretty pricey for sure everywhere on the island, but it's a different style of life. And when you can see anywhere in Parksville, which is Vancouver Island, and you can see palm trees, it has palm trees. You're like, oh, okay, well maybe this is not too bad.
No, I mean, there's something to be said for the climate, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I go back to Niagara, right? I got my friends, and I still got some family there, of course. And it's the same thing. Niagara Falls has gotten busier, and it's gotten more expensive. And the overflow from Toronto, people selling their, overpriced, little shanties and for millions of dollars, and then buying something nice and new in Niagara Falls and Southern Ontario around the Golden Horseshoe. But like, I grew up there, and it's like 10, 15 minutes. I'm anywhere I want to be. And it's like, it's easy. But saying that, I'd never move back to Ontario, not for love or money.
No, it's nice though, isn't
I'm
it?
a die-in-the-wool Albertan here, and I'll probably end up retiring here and dying here. But
Well, I've told this to a lot of people. There's a guy who has a microbrewery. I don't know how micro it is now. It's called Tool Shed, a guy named Graham Sherman.
yeah,
And he's not from here either. I can't remember where he's from, Saskatchewan or something. And he's like, man, I always tell people I'm from here. And I said, I do too. I said, I came from Ontario, but, eventually most of your family moves out here. And it so aligns with my values and how I think. And if I look around Alberta, a lot of people, for some reason, for right or for wrong, they think the way I do. This is my home, and I'm very proud of it.
yeah, and we should be. I mean, but you just travel. I mean, I've got some opportunities I'm chasing on the East Coast, and I've been out there now. The Newfies, God love them, they're lovely people, and especially as an Albertan, if you go fly across the country to see them, there's an appreciation for that. But I mean, you go to other parts, and I'm thinking Central Canada, and they think differently. And that was to what we talked about earlier, like how do you bridge that divide or that gap or difference in opinion? And it's tough because they have a worldview that a lot of Albertans, and of course, I mean, I'm biased because I make my living in the energy sector like you do, and it's like, they don't get it. And, eventually if you don't get it, well, I'm not going to sit there and try to beat it over, beat your head over it.
I've gotten to the point, it's probably very healthy for me, Rob. I stopped engaging in a lot of those conversations because some people come on pretty strong with me against, the energy industry and wrecking the environment and all that stuff. And I'm like, you know what? Right on, man. Because I know they've already got their mind made, and there's nothing I can say, Rob, that's going to change their mind. I was like, I don't need this shit in my life. So I just kind of walk away from some of those conversations.
No, fair enough. Just to segue, but it's to this point. Have you watched any of that Landman yet?
No, I've heard it.
Okay.
It's very entertaining.
No, it's awesome for a number of reasons. And Billy Bob Thornton, I mean, I was always kind of like lukewarm about him. I saw that he had, but he is. If there was ever a character made for him,
that's it.
This is it. And there's an episode. No spoiler alert, but there is him talking to a corporate person, not from Midland, Odessa, Texas, about energy, and it is brilliant. I mean, it is just it's a good minute-long rant in the one episode.
Oh, funny.
And you'll watch and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, yes, it's exactly what it is.
That's on our holiday watch list.
The binge watching, yeah.
But again, getting back to Dan King, like, I have so much respect for Dan King as an entrepreneur, and his story blew me away. How he basically took himself from up to the highest multi-million-dollar to claim bankruptcy, and his whole story is wild. I can't wait for you to hear it. And he said same thing. He's such an advocate of Canadian energy, and he said, you know what, we get so polarized when we talk about oil and gas. He said there's a lot of opportunities and benefits to all forms of different energy, including the renewable types, and that's what he advocates. I said, well, thank you, because I advocate the same thing. There's a time and place for everything, and that's something we need to get more open to that conversation rather than just it's all one or the other, because there's a time and a place for everything, basically.
For sure. And you know what, if I mean, I'm an oil and gas guy, but if you really want to have a talk about green energy, but you're unwilling or reluctant to talk about nuclear, then you're missing the plot. I mean, if you really want to go green, go nuclear, right?
Well, they're in where, like France and Germany and all that kind of stuff. I think that's what they're running, a lot of nuclear.
Well, the Europeans haven't exactly mastered it either, though.
Yeah, I know. Well, we'll see what the future looks like. I just don't know. We're bringing our kids up in generation. I'm very proud of my kids, and I got one out pipeline in BC right now because I love BC as well. And the other's going to school on the island, and I just hope he doesn't come back a hippie. I always tell him it could be contagious. Don't make sure you wash your hands all the time.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my kid, I'm not worried about that. My kid is For good and for bad, the apple does not fall too far from the tree. But looking at who he has for a mother and father, you kind of knew he was going to get beaten into. It's funny with all these the GST rebate, the carbon rebates that they're getting. And Clark, my son, God love him, he's got a good sense of humor. He goes, Dad, just to get my goat, Dad, I think all these checks, I might vote for Justin Trudeau. And I said, son, that's a great idea. He can support you so Mom and Dad don't have to.
Oh my gosh!
And he's just like he gets the joke. He understands it. But we're just sitting there getting checks for Clark. It's like, are you kidding me?
So one of the funniest stories I heard about lately, I think Marie told me, she goes, did Kenny tell you the story where Kai met, I think it was Trudeau or Christia or one of those, I can't remember who it was. And it was like at a party or a get together or something for his school up in the Yukon, and I guess Kai went up, oh man, can I shake your hand and get a picture? And my dad would be so happy for me to meet you and stuff like that. So Kai got a picture, like him and Trudeau and stuff. He sent it to Kenny.
Ken probably went, what?
But Kai was laughing so hard, like he thought it was hilarious. You see even Jessica H., my lovely sister-in-law, who I love so much. She's pretty quiet on social media, but every now and then she pops up and she just gives them a blast, and it makes me howl every time.
Oh, I know. God love her. Yeah, she's a character, and she's got her own strong opinions. So
yeah, but they're settling into farm life okay, and I'm really happy for them.
No, they're good. I actually, the next trip I go up north, like either to Edmonton or get to the field, I'm gonna have to make a point of reaching out and say, hey, want to come by and check out the farm and visit?
Oh, they would love that so much. They'll have a hug and dinner waiting for you, no doubt.
Oh, well, of course they would. Great people. So,
yeah.
But Dave, I mean, I appreciate you doing this because, you're getting a following, and I've actually people that I wouldn't necessarily know that would have heard your podcast and these kind of sessions. Get notes. Hey, heard you, Rob, on
I hope so.
No, you are. I can tell you that.
I've met so many people that I value and people I call friends now that I've met along the way, and I'm the same as you. Like, there's so much nonsense out there, and I know this podcast doesn't speak to everyone, and I get it, but it does speak to somebody, and a lot of those people are the people I like. So if they want to listen and hopefully improve our life and hopefully speak some positive things about whether it's mental health or energy, I'm all ears.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I mean, obviously, to me, it starts and stops with a healthy economy, lifting, the old cliche, but there's truth to it. It's a rising tide lifts all boats, and it allows people in governments to do other things for other people. If we're making money and people are supporting their families and not stressing with their next meal or making their rent payment or mortgage payment. I mean, and right now there's a lot of people hurting. When Clark gets back, we've had this, and this isn't a shameless plug, but I would encourage anybody, if this gets listened to before Christmas, give to the food bank. If you're going to give to anything, right? I mean, so Clark and I started a tradition years ago where we'd go out one day and we'll shop, and we'll go to Walmart and whatever to get canned goods and non-perishables, and then you can get some turkeys and you buy a bunch, and then we drop it off at the food bank. We started that years ago when he was a lot younger.
That's a great plug, Rob.
And so we're going to do that again. I told him, I said, be sure to make sure you give me either Sunday morning or Monday morning your time. We're going to get up, and it's a kind of father-son tradition.
Man, that's awesome.
And then just so he can see, and he gets it. I mean, I think our kids get it, and they understand that they're fortunate in their lot in life.
I hope so.
I know, I think they do. I think, and it's not too hard necessarily, spectacular parenting all the time. I think they're just good innately. They understand it, but it's good for them to see a physical reminder of seeing people. I remember it was a couple of years ago. It was coming out of COVID, and we did it. And there's the one line, I don't know how familiar with the food bank, but the physical location in Calgary, down in the southeast somewhere. And you go in there, and they're saying, are you waiting in line you getting food here? And it's like, no, I'm here to make a donation. So you kind of whip right in, and there's loading bays. And Dave, I drove away there with a heavy heart. There was a lineup of cars, and it's like a drive-through. It's like going like a McDonald's drive-through, right? There was the lineup of cars that snaked through the parking lot, blocked the entrance to the bays to where they get deliveries and where people make donations, and then it went back at least a kilometer, if not longer. And it was, I can't remember. I want to say it was like the 22nd of December or something like that. So just before Christmas. And I thought, there's one thing not to have the newest shoes or the newest jacket or whatever. It's a whole different thing when you're sitting there worrying about how you feed yourself. Like,
or your kids.
Or your kids, exactly. Yeah. So, just support the food bank. If you did that, then you did a good deed for the Christmas holidays.
No, I appreciate that. No, thank you. I know it's funny. We were talking about Kenny and Jess. So Jess and Kenny, they're big on whenever you go to Safeway. They have those prefab bags. They're $5 or $10 or whatever. Every time they go through, and they always grab one every single time. And I actually adopted that from them.
I've done it on occasion. I haven't done it all the time, but I should. That should be a thing.
That was one of their things, and they still do it. And they're so good about, even the eggs and all that stuff. And if you can afford them, great. And if you can't, she just gives them to them.
Well,
even though
your brother and sister-in-law got huge hearts.
Special people.
They're very nice people. They're go visit their farm people.
Yeah. Well, Rob, before we part ways, please share me some positive words of encouragement for those people who are out there struggling right now.
I think there's a lot of people more conscious of other people's plights than probably any time before. Mm-hmm. I think even people that are fortunate that don't have the same struggles or the insecurities around finances or food security. Mm-hmm. I hope that my take on it is that I think more and more people are starting to realize that we have to pull together and help these people get through a tough time, especially at Christmas, without judgment. Because, admittedly, in the past, Dave, sometimes you get frustrated with people. It's like, come on, wake up, make a better decision. But sometimes you realize that they were never given the opportunities to develop any of those skills. Sure. But when it comes to food, I think people realize that we got to help people out. Mm-hmm. And then I think people realize that we have to make a change of government. And I'm not saying, not that we started kind of on politics, maybe we'll end on politics. I just think that nobody that you will vote for will ever give you a full loaf of bread, if you'll pardon the pun. We're talking about food, but but if you can get 6 out of 10 slices of bread, you're probably doing better than most. And I just hope Poilievre understands. He says he's going to champion, the working guy and the working family. You can still be a conservative and do that, and the best form of welfare is a job, and the best form of is some sort of, and I do think help's on the way. I just think it's going to be a tough Christmas for a lot of people. This is a tough. I love it. This time of year, nothing makes me happier than to visit friends and watch a little bit of hockey and football and all the things that I like to do. But, there are a lot of people around the city that are hurting, and you just have to acknowledge that and try to do your part, right? So, I do think more and more people are getting that message this year. I talked to a lot of my contemporaries are starting to realize that, they're doing fundraisers, right? It used to be a Christmas party, and now it was like U.S. Thanksgiving, the Turkey Bowl. Well, hey, make a donation. Proceeds will go to, the food bank or go to some of these charities at Christmas. Awesome. Happy to make that donation.
That's good. Thanks, New. I appreciate it, brother.
So, appreciate it, Dave.
Till next time?
Till next time, and you got me anytime you want. I love doing this.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Dave.